Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the new Odd Couple. What was your role? Now you're an individual entity.
Yes.
So
yes.
what was your role as the producer on that show?
I was in charge of, everything. I was the creative. I did all the casting, did all the, supervised the writing, and basically just ran the ship. And they had done an episode without me. See, Gary Nardino still had an attitude about, or at least was too embarrassed to not, to keep me away. And they had shot it. They had hired a staff and a bunch of producers to do it, and it was a disaster. It was like they had never seen the show. So Gary, at that point, who had told me that he was going to hire me to do it, but again picked his fights well. He said, "I ain't going to fight with Nardino about this." I mean, if I was him, I wouldn't have either. But then I got the call. And I was told that Gary really forced me down Nardino's throat. And I came in and turned it from a show that ABC was ready to pull the plug on to a show that they got hot about and wanted to promote. And I was a hero. They carried me around on their shoulders. Same network that ostensibly hated me. They loved me. And the bottom line is, I thought the shows were very good. We recycled a lot of the scripts and made them better. We went back to first drafts a lot of things got shot down because of money. There was a joke I wanted to do. We redid one of the courtroom shows on the original Odd Couple, where the ticket scalper show, and where Felix always is his own lawyer, and we always found a reason for Felix to humiliate Oscar on the stand. And the humiliation in this case was to get Oscar to admit how hard he tried to get a date. That this was not a ticket meant to be scalped, it was a ticket meant for his date. So in our first draft, we had a joke where Felix turns to the gallery and says, "Will every woman who is in this courtroom that Oscar Madison asked out for this date please rise?" And this motley collection of women stand up and check each other out. And I don't know, I think it was funnier because it was a whole bunch of black women. And it just got the scream of all times. And they cut that joke in the original version because it was considered a $500 joke to hire all those extras just for that joke. And we were shot down. So it proved to me that you indeed can go home again. That was my most pleasant memory of that show. The shows were good. There's nothing wrong with rewriting stuff. The remakes are not necessarily a bad idea for movies, so why should they be a bad idea for TV?
How did you update the scripts for an African American cast? What were the changes?
Reluctantly. I didn't want to update them much at all, but the cast had problems, particularly Ron Glass. Ron Glass was not a good idea. He had a fear of looking ridiculous. Now you're playing Felix Unger. Felix Unger is a ridiculous character. But he wanted all the humor to be based on how ridiculous Oscar was and him going, and that just left no way for Felix to be funny. So we were constantly going at it over that. And and simultaneously, as I was working on this show, the Laverne and Shirley money from syndication started rolling in. And it gave me a new attitude about working. I mean, we're talking about tons of money. And I said, okay, I've proved my point. I'm an individual. People know what I do. The network loves me. The studio loves me. They love what I do. I don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore. So I only want to work on things that I thought were good. And I only want to work on things that involve a pleasant work atmosphere. Now, I thought The New Odd Couple was good, in spite of what Ron Glass wanted. But eventually, it just became too much of a hassle to deal with them. And there were other problems that were, about it not being a good work atmosphere. And after 10 shows, I said, I have the money. I don't need this anymore. And it was really getting aggravating. And I had one foot out the door already, and I let myself get shoved out the door. I wasn't fired, I quit. And there was some attempt to try to keep me, but I said, fellas, I don't need this. So I left. And then I went through a period of getting sent scripts to be a showrunner on that just were crap. I mean, they just didn't come up to the standards that I had now set for myself of, can I make this any good? And I didn't know if it was going to be a good working situation or not, but I just didn't want to work on some of these things. And they were, a lot of them, again, I have the kind of resume that, except for The Odd Couple, it looked like I spent my entire career working in the toy department, They were, shows that did not garner critical respect. So people didn't think of me in those terms. Hence, I got offered a lot of crap. Hence, I turned a lot of crap down. Hence, people stopped offering me even crap. And that was fine with me, but I became known as a guy who keeps turning things down. Then somebody who was a network person on The New Odd Couple became the head of comedy development at Lorimar. And she saw what I did on The New Odd Couple. And she sent me a pilot that had been done like 5 years previously, where they were taking a chance on reviving.
Before we go there,
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, I just wanted to ask you about Damon Wilson on the New Odd Couple. Can you talk a little bit about him?
He was pleasant, very pleasant. I thought he was very good. Very good. One interesting thing.
Yeah.
There was this man who hung around on the stage a lot of the time. Seedy-looking, big, fat guy with a scraggly beard, scraggly hair, a raincoat on. Who's this guy who's hanging around all the time? He says, oh, that's Damon Wilson's manager. Oh? What's his name? He says, Roy Radin. You know who Roy Radin is? You remember the Cotton Club murders? He was the victim in the Cotton Club murders. Roy Radin. There he was,
Wow.
hanging around as Damon Wilson's manager. Just thought I'd throw that in. You wanted to know something interesting about that show? I thought that was interesting.
That's really interesting.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I was
No.
headed, yeah. So this girl, I forget, Lynn something, I don't remember her last name, remembered what I had done on the, they really liked what I did on the New Odd Couple. And so she sent me a cassette of a pilot that they were looking to to redo as a series. They're going to revive it, exhume it from, the dead. And I watched it, and I was really on the fence as far as the crap test went. And I thought to myself, I've seen worse shows than this. I've seen better shows than this. But if they do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I had like 14 of those, if they do those things, I think it could be good. So I called her up after I watched it. I said, here's what I think this show needs. I'll just tell you, you tell me what you think. They loved everything I said. And they brought me in, and that became She's the Sheriff. And again, it was a pleasure doing it myself. It was the most fun I ever had working on a show because I was really the general. And the interesting thing to talk about, She's the Sheriff, is I think I became an innovator about how to put a writing staff together. Nobody had ever tried this to my knowledge. Gary always believed, as do I, in just getting a gang of young bodies. I had to convince middle management at Lorimar, who wanted to just have a story editor and 2 producers. I said, no. That's for somebody else. That's not for me. For me, you get a gang of young bodies. First of all, it was mid-season. It was a syndicated show. You're not going to get anybody that good who's going to do it for this little money, But if you get a lot of young bodies who are relatively inexperienced, who at least do one thing well, I can turn them into a staff. So I created what I call the assembly line of writing. I mean, in the old the Gary Marshall days, it was just pair up a bunch of writers and break down a scene that came in from the outside writer and have people rework those scenes, and then it's like a jigsaw puzzle. Then put it back together and read it out loud and see where things lie. Now, that's how I always worked with all the staffs we had. But I thought, man, there's got to be a better way than this. And I decided to separate. I mean, there are two kind of writers that I hired. There are storytellers and there are joke writers. And if, as a showrunner, see, when Lowell was a showrunner, he needed someone like me around to keep him on track with the story. When I wasn't around, he needed other people like me. When you're a storyteller like I am, and you're doing a sitcom that requires jokes, you try to surround yourself with joke writers, So I had more joke writers than storytellers. But, generally the scripts came in from the freelance writers, and the freelance writers don't know the show. But the guild says you have to give a certain number to the freelance writers, and they came back terrible. And I put it on the assembly line. First I gave it to the storytellers. I said, okay, here's the story I pitched. It didn't come in the way I pitched it. Line up the story the way it's supposed to be, which they did. Then it would go down the assembly line to the joke writers. I refer to them as stuff writers. I want them to stuff the script with jokes, right? And then we'd have a stuff session where 3 teams of joke writers, okay, page 1, what do you got? And I'd hear, people throwing jokes in all directions. And I put myself in the perfect position for me to be the judge. Because a little man inside me knew which joke was going to be better than the others. Little man has never deserted me. So nobody has ever taken it from storytellers to joke writers to the stage. And it meant that I had to do very little writing. Because it's the Earl Weaver theory of you know, using people correctly. If you got a guy who can only hit lefties, you don't put him up against righties. You know, if you got a guy who's a great joke writer, you don't ask him to do anything else but write jokes. If you got someone who can tell a story well who can't write a joke, you don't ask him to write a joke. So it was very efficient. And I don't know if anyone's ever done it before or since, but it made it very easy to write.
That's great.
Okay.
So let's talk about Suzanne Summers. Talk about working with her.
Suzanne Summers was delightful. It was absolutely delightful. Once I knew we had Suzanne Summers, I knew that we were dead critically. I don't think anyone was going to believe her with her platinum blonde hair and her long fingernails and this outfit that they stuffed her into as a real sheriff. I think that, again, set us up for the critics saying, kick me hard. And it did. It's all packaging. The 300 people loved it, most of the time. She tried to become Lucy. And going in, I said to her, look, the one thing we can't be on this show is Lucy, because we need credibility. We have to believe that this is an actual sheriff. We can't have a kidding around sheriff. She has to be real. But she had her heart set on being Lucy. And at one point, I was in Vegas watching her nightclub act. We all were invited out. And I got invited out to her house with her husband. And they served me lunch. And it turned out to be an afternoon of lunch and pummeling. And by the time I got out of there, it was, all right, I'll try to write a Lucy. And again, I tried to do what Lucy did best, which was turn her into a victim of circumstance. And the little man inside of me said, this ain't going to work. And during the run-throughs, people were laughing like crazy. And I still knew it wasn't going to work. I said, wait till the 300 geniuses show up. And, you know, I tried to do it as good as I could. I really did, because I'm a professional. I want to be a professional. But, you know, half of me was rooting for it to fail, because I don't want to have to keep writing Lucy. She ain't Lucy. You know, nobody's Lucy except maybe Cindy Williams. It was, the little man was right. The audience just sat there. Now, we had done 8 shows in a row that were gangbusters, which surprised the Lorimar people tremendously. They said, man, this guy knows what he's doing, you know. And they were surprised that, you know, the shows would come out that well with this ragtag staff that I put together. But at that point, they got so used to the fact that the shows were going well that, and you know, this week, because they knew what was going on between me and Suzanne about this, they just laid back. They didn't get involved. They gave me no notes. And usually they're all over me with notes. And this week they backed off. So we got done, and they said, and the main guy, who's a very nice guy, but, you know, a little full of himself about what he knows about comedy. And he said, what happened? What went wrong? I mean, every week you knock it out of the park. Here, this was like, you know, very few laughs. What happened? I said, fellas, you know what I think it is? You just didn't give me enough notes. That's the kind of thing that I say to people that can rub them the wrong way. I do have that tendency here and there to not exactly be a diplomat, but we ended on very good terms. He respected me like crazy, and I kind of saw the way. I ended up being the only one who cared about how good. And like I said, once you're on the air for a while, it doesn't matter how good the shows are. But it mattered to me. And I said, I see where we're headed with this. If I'm the only one who cares about how good this stuff is, I don't need it anymore. And I was only getting more and more money from Laverne and Shirley. And I just bowed out after that year. They did another year without me. I never saw it. I didn't care. From that point on, I was offered occasional crap, which I turned down. And then they stopped offering it to me, and I started writing plays and screenplays, and that's why there's this 20-year gap in my TV resume of, like, where is he gone? Well, I've gone to write plays and novels and screenplays, and the plays are now, I'm establishing very good ties with major venues, and I've got a great approach working. I'm in the works now for several big productions of one of my plays. And that's where I live. That's where I really live. I was a theater guy to begin with. I always wanted to act in plays, but I found out that I can write, and I write plays that are, I think, as good as, anytime I go to Broadway, it's like, well, why this and not my stuff? So, and I don't need to go to Broadway. I just like to see them in major venues with a lot of people laughing. That's all I need in my life now. And the money keeps coming in. And so essentially, I'm a contented person. Ask me what you want, but that's what I needed to say about She's the Sheriff, and
Great.
fire away.
So you talked a little bit about theater. What other current projects are you working on? Tell us about your blog.
Okay, I have a blog that I've had since 2009, and they're essays. They're all essays, for the most part. My thoughts, my opinions about things, anecdotes about a lot of things that I've been telling you have appeared on the blog. Recently, we only really touched on it superficially, but on the blog, my entire working relationship with Lowell has been accounted for in a series of articles. See, he went on to write movies with a guy named Babalu Mandel. So, and very big hit movies, a lot of them with Billy Crystal. And I wrote a series of articles called Why I Am Not Babalu Mandel, parts 1 through 8. And they appear on the blog, www.markrothmansblog.blogspot.com. And they were all posted in September of 2013. And if you want to get a more thorough examination of what our career together was like, I recommend it to you. It's up to you. It's there if you want to read it. But I have an enormous following on this blog, mainly because early on, I'm sure you know who Leonard Maltin is. Well, he has a blog, and he found me early on, and he recommended my blog to his readers. As a result, I have all of his readers. There are other big bloggers like Ken Levine and Mark Evanier, and they recommended my blog to their readers. So I have their readers. And it gives me an opportunity to talk in shorthand to the readers. I don't have to say things like Ingrid Bergman, who was in Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart. They know. I can talk in shorthand because Leonard Maltin's readers are very sophisticated about movies. So it enables me to write. I don't have to write down to anybody. I write eye to eye with people. And I write like 3 essays a week, and my readers, it's a shame. I wish they disagreed with me more. There's a comment section, and all that happens in the comment section is they tell me how much they love the article that I wrote. I would, it's kind of like MSNBC. They always have people on who agree with them. I don't need that. I enjoy sparring with people. I enjoy mixing it up with people who don't agree with me. That makes it more fun. I don't have that so much. I only have people who are cheerleaders for me. But that's gratifying, too. And it's a pleasure to do. It's a way, and I didn't even know that I could write essays until I started the blog, and that I just got because I got a pop-up from AOL saying, "You want to write a blog? It's free." I said, "Let me at it," And if I didn't start writing the blog, I never would have attempted writing a novel because I found a style. I found a prose style that's quite different from my script style. And that's what enabled me to write novels. And I love that too. It's a completely different skill. When you write script, this is the kind of stuff I tell writers. I say, if you're writing scripts, you're not writing for a reader, like when you're writing a novel. When you write a novel, you're writing for the reader. When you're writing a script, you're writing for an actor to interpret it, or for a director to interpret it. So my advice to a lot of aspiring writers is take acting lessons. Know what's going on in an actor's mind when he picks up your script, so that if for whatever reason he's misinterpreting it, you at least are able to get up and say, no, I didn't mean that, I meant this. And you got to be able to do it with some command. So I tell aspiring writers, see what it's like on the other side of the camera. Envision what an actor is going through. I don't hear a lot of people advising young writers to take acting lessons, but I think if they're writing scripts, I think it's very important.
What other advice do you have for aspiring writers?
I tried it. For one thing, they've got to ask themselves, for one thing, why are they writing? Why do you want to be a writer? Aside from the fact that it might make you very rich. A lot of things can make you very rich. Writing is probably one of the hardest ways to go at it. So have a good reason other than trying to get rich. Have a passion for it. If you don't have a passion for it, then you're wasting everybody's time. Then you're just filling up pages. Ask yourself, why is this wonder? You put something down on paper. Do you think it's wonderful? Why is it wonderful? If you don't think it's wonderful, what do you have to do to make it wonderful? And if you can't answer that question, don't show it to anybody. It's important, particularly for young writers, to have a sense of history, to know what came before them. It's important for everybody, not just writers. It's important for an entire younger generation to know what went on before them, and there seems to be a mild contempt for that knowledge. But if you're writing, and you've never seen a Billy Wilder movie, if you've never seen a Preston Sturges movie, and you're trying to write comedy, you're not getting an education. And the thing is, Turner Classic Movies is there. When I was growing up, there was nothing like Turner Classic Movies. The best you could have in those days there was a show on Channel 9 called $1 Million Movie. And what they did was they took a classic movie like Citizen Kane, King Kong, major classic movies, and they'd show that one movie 11 times in that 1 week. And they were that good that you'd watch them almost 11 times in that week. It was like going to film school. But even there were commercials, there were cuts. Everything on Turner is uncut the way it was meant to be seen in the first place. And there's so many more movies available that were ever on TV when I was growing up. That and I told a friend of mine once about $1 Million Movie, and he grew up in Ohio, on the outskirts of Columbus, where they only picked up 3 stations and they were snowy, and the only outlet for movies was this show on in the afternoon called Flippo the Clown, where, there would be a movie, but there would also be, Dialing for Dollars, and he would talk about his latest car dealership openings that he'd appear at, and it wasn't really about the movie, and they would be loaded with commercials. And I told him about $1 Million Movie, and he said, "No wonder you know so much more about movies than I do. All I had was Flippo," Well, Flippo is to $1 Million Movie like $1 Million Movie is to Turner. Turner is such a leap forward, and people don't realize how wonderful it is because they've had it all their lives. They don't know what an innovation it's been and how great it is and how many great movies there are to see on it. It's amazing. You go through the guide any day, and there are tremendous movies on every day, and a young writer must be aware of those movies and watch them and learn from them, because they'll learn. The old movies were really well constructed and as funny as anything. And the old television shows too. They should know about Sergeant Bilko. They should know about the Honeymooners. They should know about the Dick Van Dyke Show. There is a bit more awareness. It's a shame that, Sid Caesar's old show isn't on anywhere. But they're on DVD. Everything is on DVD. I maintain that today is the golden age of television, not the 50s. And today is the golden age of television because there are just as many wonderful shows on today as there have ever been any time. Certainly more than were on in the mid-'60s. But you have more than that. Not only do you have all these wonderful shows, but you have access through YouTube and DVDs to everything that's ever been on television. You can go back and you can watch it when you want to watch it. You're not slaves to the least desirable, the least undesirable programming, which is the way it used to be. I can't tell you how much crap I watched when I was a kid that I would never deign to watch today because I don't have to, because I can always watch something that I want to see. So, okay,
That's great.
I'm prattling on here.
What advice would you give to writing partners?
Well, try to establish your own credibility as individuals first. If I had done that, I would, I don't know. I had this huge success with a partner with Laverne and Shirley. And, essentially, I've been successful. But still, it helps if there is absolute trust. If you work out what your roles are as partners, and it's essential that you have each other's backs. Past that, everything, that's my experience with working with a partner, is that I didn't have that. What else is there to do? figure out a writing style that's good for both of you. I mean, I essentially abandoned my writing style to accommodate his. And it worked, but it even made me feel like I was only a glorified editor. And I shouldn't have to feel that way. I knew what I could do, but I wasn't given the opportunity to do it. You've got to work out the ground rules between you, and it's got to be something that you can agree on and stick to. You know.
What do you consider the highlight of your career?
I consider my plays. Well, no, actually, I consider my novel and my screenplays. But it's hard to judge the screenplays because here's something that should be noted. I have on YouTube a reading of a screenplay of the Laverne and Shirley movie that I wrote a few years ago that Paramount paid me for. I don't even own it anymore. Paramount owns it. And which shows me off very well. I'm very proud of it. If someone decided to make a movie out of Laverne and Shirley, that's the movie they should make. I'm very proud of it. But most of my other screenplays really haven't been made, so I can't be all that proud of it unless it gets made well. But I've seen my plays been shown well, so I'm really proud of those. And they've never failed. I've always see an audience walking out glad that they came. So it's a lot easier to be proud of your own work than it is of work. I mean, everything I did in TV, which is why I'm here, has all been collaborative. And because I was a showrunner, most of the other writers I worked with weren't as good as me, because if they were, they'd be the showrunner. So when you work in collaboration with somebody, it's harder to be proud as when you're basically letting your own voice come out, which is what I do in my screenplays and my plays, particularly my plays.
What do you consider your biggest regret?
Biggest regret? Boy, there are so many. It's hard to choose. My biggest, I suppose I should have worked things out with Lowell before we really started working together. And at a point where he was much more dependent on me. Because he was dependent on me when my father started having these contacts through the limousine business. I mean, I should have set down the ground rules then. I knew it was a problem then, and we should have talked it out. So at least, I don't know if that would have helped, but at least it would have been out in the open. Yes, I'll work with you, but maybe we should have 2 desks instead of 1. Maybe we should do some individual writing. I mean, I wanted to do some individual writing, and he essentially didn't want me to, because that would have left him with nobody to ride the horse. And he knew I could write by myself. And, you know, even in college, there was a time where I had written something by myself, and I showed it to him. And I'd showed it to a bunch of my friends, and it made them hysterical. It was a magazine article. And he dismissed it as being one joke. Now, the little man that I knew about knew it was more than one joke. So why would he say that? I think he said it for 2 reasons. He wanted me to be dependent on him. He wanted me to think I needed him. I knew I didn't need him. I knew he made my life easier by having, working with him made it easy to write. We wrote a lot faster. And so I think he wanted to essentially make me a little bit insecure about my own writing. I mean, these are the kind of things I should have talked to him about at the time. I said, look, I know that this is funny. I don't know why you're doing this, but if we're going to work together, we got to iron this stuff out beforehand, because I don't know really that I can trust you. That should have been said. But to give him his due, when we sold that Odd Couple spec script, I honestly think, I don't think I could have written it. I don't think I could have written it without him, because I wasn't a joke writer. And that's what they were looking for. And I think that we got our jobs because of his jokes. So, I mean, you take with one hand, you give with the other. It was a trade-off, and looking back, I guess I would have, even though it was a regret, it wouldn't have been a deal breaker, because look at how well I did. I mean, with it all, I'm a content person. I've been a content person for a long time. I've done very well for myself. Our partnership was a monstrosity, but we did really good work together, and we did really well from it. Yeah, I didn't have the movie career. Yeah, he could buy and sell me 25 times over, but you know what? You only have one life. He has enough money for 25 lives. I have enough for one. We only get one. So whatever he does with those other 24 lives, he ain't going to be able to spend that money on anything, because he's not going to be around. Neither of us are going to be around. So I don't have any ill feelings about him having a movie career, but I do think I should have been in on the ground. There was capital that was spent, that we built up together, and he spent it all on somebody else. And I think I could have made those movies a lot better than they were. That's a minor regret. It's only a minor regret. And I never would have found out how good a writer I was if I hadn't broken up with him. I really found my voice. I mean, we were dealing with his voice for the most part when we were together and doing really well with it. But I never would have found my voice unless we had broken up. So I do not at all regret breaking up with him. I do not like the way it happened. I had no control over it, but I have no regrets, really.
What do you think your legacy in the entertainment world is?
I'm hoping it's my plays. I mean, if I were to die tomorrow, it'll be co-creator of Laverne and Shirley, which is fine. But my plays are better than that. And I want to be, it's never too late to get, I mean, I know I'm too old and I'm too, late blooming to get a Kennedy Center honor. I know that. But, I'd like to garner respect. I mean, I think I'm as good a playwright as the best of them. I mean, my god of playwriting is David Mamet. And David Mamet could write 3 plays in a row that suck, and I'll be in line to see the 4th one, because he's impressed me that many times in the past. And I steal from him mercilessly. But I think I write very much like him, and very much on the same level. And I think I do something that neither Woody Allen nor Neil Simon have been able to do. I've written great screenplays and great plays. Woody Allen has written great screenplays, but not great plays. Neil Simon has written great plays, but not great screenplays. I think I'm double-barreled. I can do it both. So I would love my legacy to be that he's on that level. I want that kind of respect. And it's not easy, but I'll take what I can get. I'll be happy if I could just tour the country with my plays and just watch people enjoy them. That's all I want out of life these days. I'm not looking to bring them to Broadway right away, because if you have a critic who has a piece of bad fish that night, then there's no afterlife for your plays. So I want my afterlife to happen beforehand. Then take it to New York and let it live or die, but let everyone in the country see it first, you know? That's what I want. I would like more respect than I have, particularly as far as my plays go, because see, what I do in my plays is the rap on my plays is that my second acts are always better than my firsts, which I consider the highest compliment. Because if your first acts are better than your second, then you're going downhill. But if your second act, what usually happens is people go and they see the first act and they go to intermission, they buy the orangeade. They say, boy, that was really funny. What fun that was, you know. Then they'll come back for the second act, and they will be knocked on their asses. And I was like, wow, boy, that second act was sure a lot better than the first act. Not remembering that they had really enjoyed the first act. My only solution to that is to not have intermissions. Just let it keep going through. But I don't care if they like the second. I mean, that's the way it should be, because I'm always building to surprises. If an audience can ever figure out where I'm going with something, then I failed. I just totally failed. And they never figure out where I'm going. And when they see where I'm going, they're always thrilled that I took them there. That's what I've got to offer as a playwright. I'm always, if I can't surprise an audience constantly, I haven't done my job. And I know how to do that. I'm a master of construction. And there are very few jokes in my plays, but there's a ton of character humor and attitude humor. And I write like Mamet with a musical rhythm. It's very difficult to read my plays, as it is very difficult for anyone who hasn't done a Mamet play to read his plays, because they are in musical rhythm. And unless you're hearing the music in your heads, you don't know how to read them. And my solution to that is to attempt to do readings of them for people, not send people scripts, but to have them listen to me do readings of them. And that's where I usually succeed, because my stuff is very misinterpretable. In the wrong hands, they're just good. It's like one of these plays is a souffle. It's just a souffle. And if it's not heard right, it's like a cake that fell in the oven. But in my hands, out of my mouth, it's a souffle. So, and the audience adores it. But I'm taking a big risk when I just hand somebody a script.
All right. Wow. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Had
your
enough
time
fun?
today. really appreciate you doing this.
Well, I'm delighted at the opportunity. I hope I haven't gone on too long.
No, it was excellent.
Okay.
Really
so you
great.
got me onto my favorite subject. So,
That's great.
so
That's great.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.